Welcome to Grow Fast, Grow Smart, the PI Playbook by Accelerator, the podcast exclusively designed to help personal injury law firms reach their full potential and serve their clients better. Let's jump in.
Hey everybody, Stephen DeBosier with Dudley DeBosier. I'm back again with Jack Van Steenburg, and we're talking about trucking safety number 2. All right, now there's another place that this has been my boogaboo. I really don't like the way this is set up, and drug and alcohol. Because a lot of these crashes I have found through the years, I've seen every drug known to man being taken by these truck drivers. And let me clarify this, so somebody doesn't get mad at me and send me an email. There's a lot of drivers on the road that aren't on drugs, aren't on alcohol, and they're doing the right thing. The ones on the alcohol, the ones on the drugs are the ones I get to visit. So for me, it's always a larger percentage, and it's usually about 50%. If I'm working on a trucking case, half the time the guy's on some type of drugs. And so what do we do about that? Is that kept anywhere?
Yeah, it's called the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, and it's been a home run since it went into place. It puts all the positive drug tests and alcohol tests into one big database. Before that, it was all manual. It was just kept by the trucking companies, and you had to rely on that.
Maybe kept by it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so here's my problem with it. This audience is like, that's great. We can go now find out if this driver or this company's ever hired by somebody using drugs. Can they get it?
No. Privacy. No. It's, there's always a law, and the law prohibits you from getting this information.
Now, let's talk about, I'm also, and I use it myself, pronouns, to get things get a little confusing. Let's not use the pronoun you. The trucking company can get it.
Absolutely.
If they want to hire Steve DeBosier, they can find out through the clearinghouse how many times I have tested positive for drugs, right?
Absolutely.
But when that person runs over and kills somebody, that truck driver, the family of the person they just killed can't get it, can they?
They cannot.
But they can get it from whom?
They would have to get it from the trucking company. And then you put your subpoena powers together and, let the courts work out their magic. Yeah,
I just had one recently, and they said, well, because of HIPAA, we can't give it to you.
Well, that's the privacy.
Well, HIPAA doesn't apply to trucking companies.
But, so you mentioned the drug and alcohol. So you're you're looking at a case. Every driver is required to take a pre-employment drug test. Every driver. I shouldn't say every driver. And there's another distinction, CDL versus non-CDL, and I can complicate things that way. But generally speaking,
let's limit this to CDL.
Yes,
because that's
all the drug and alcohol applies to, and that's CDL, just 26,001 and above. That's what you need to know, generally speaking.
26,001 is the pounds of the vehicle.
Yes.
I want to make sure everybody understands that.
Thanks.
Sorry. No, that's okay. I mean, a lot of times when you're an expert on things, you talk about things that everybody understands.
And I've always told the attorneys that I'm working with, please correct me, please help me if I work with them,
That's right.
But so you have to take a pre-employment drug test. You do not have to take a pre-employment alcohol test. Reason, alcohol doesn't stay in your system that long, and it's not a random alcohol test either. You basically go, okay, I want to work for you. I know I got to get a drug and alcohol test or alcohol test if I had to. I just wouldn't drink, for a couple of days.
It always humors me because when you have a random test or a test after a crash, they can't prepare for that. The driver can't prepare for that, correct?
Correct.
But when you say you got to do a pre-employment drug test, well, hang on a second. I'll see y'all in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
I'll come by next month and take that test, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always entertaining, so y'all should be looking for this when you see somebody fill out an application to go work at a company, and then they go start 2 months later. You might be wondering, why is that? It might very well be that they didn't want to get drug or alcohol tested until down the road.
Yeah, and they can. There's nothing stopping them from a company having it, but they can't apply it to you, and they can't be selective. They have to, have a, we're going to do it for every 20 applicants, or we're going to do it for everybody. So, but the vast majority of the companies don't even test for alcohol, and they're not required to. They do test for drug, but all those tests are entered into the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. So all the
there's a
pre-employment.
database that has all this information. The question is how to get to it.
Right.
Because that, from the public standpoint, seems a little frustrating that somebody's just lost a family member to an 18-wheeler driver,
Right.
and they can't even find out if this company hired this drug addict in the first place, right? And so, but what our audience should be doing is going straight to the company saying, give us this data. Give us the data from the clearinghouse so that we know what driver you hired. Correct? And they have that information.
And it should be in the driver qualification file too. That's another thing, to look at that driver qualification file. And the companies I'm representing do a pretty good job of keeping that. But they'll have in there that pre-employment test, and the results. So,
But do they have in the driver qualification file, and let me put a little caveat for this, for those of y'all listening, when you're asking for the driver qualification file, put another interrogatory or request for production document that says this: every piece of paper in your company with that guy's name on it.
Yeah.
Because they'll play these games of, oh, we call that the something different. You didn't
could be
ask
the
for that.
application, just the application.
That's
Yeah.
right. We didn't have a driver
Yeah.
qualification
Yeah.
file. We had an application. So any piece of paper that has this driver's name on it, I want it from your company.
Absolutely.
But in that, does it have in the driver qualification file, which every company should have, right, on their drivers?
Even owner-operators.
And so in that file, will it have the clearinghouse information on there? So let me be clear about that. I'm going to hire Jack to drive my truck.
Yeah.
I go and I do a drug test on Jack, and Jack, he's negative. So I put him behind the wheel. But I might say, Jack's suspicious. I might want to go check the clearinghouse to see what his driving history looks like, or his drug and alcohol history looks like. And they find it and you tested positive in the past. Would that be in your driver qualification file?
It could. So let me give you an example. I'm a driver. I'm the driver applying for you. You think I'm shady. You have to ask me, I have to give you permission to go in that drug and alcohol database, pre-employment.
We're fighting that battle right now in a case. And don't you think that's odd if you want to have a safe company and I say, Jack, I know you passed this test, but I'd like to look and see if you had any positive testing in the past. And Jack says, no, I'm not going to let you do that. You hire that guy or you don't hire that guy?
I don't hire that guy. I mean,
a safe company would say, no frickin' way.
Yeah.
Right? A dangerous company would say, oh, he said he wouldn't give it to me. I need a butt in the seat, so.
I'm getting off subject now. I had a motor carrier when I was working with him. He goes, my driver will not wear his seatbelts no matter what I do. What do I do? I said, fire him.
Stop calling him your driver.
That was simple. But so you're right. I wouldn't hire that driver. But the driver has to give you permission to do an inquiry on his past workers.
And that's
And you know that there's a big dispute going on right now. The only form of drug testing is done urine. And there's a big push to go out there and do hair testing.
There's no doubt. And so, I deal with this a lot. And I have some sympathy for some of the trucking companies. I know because, if you go to my house right now, there's a good chance there's an Amazon box sitting in front of my house.
Yeah.
Right? These guys they're on the road all the time now. And so they got to get, what I hear all the time is butts in the seats. Right? They got to get butts in the seats. Well, if you're going to go and drug and alcohol test people by their hair, the problem with that is it goes way back. Right?
Yeah.
And I hope it doesn't go back to college for me, but if it does, I got some problems. But
90, 120 days.
Okay. So you know more about this driver if you go back 120 days. You know less about the driver if you do a urine test, but the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration only requires the urine test.
Right. Now, in saying that, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has to go by what the Department of Health and Human Services says. They have to approve the type of testing. And I know there's a big push for hair testing. I'm a believer in hair testing.
Well, who's not a believer in hair testing? the person that did heroin 60 days ago.
Yeah, I agree. We use it in the state police. So we did urine and hair when I was with the state police. And it worked. I hate to say it worked well. I mean, we got rid of a lot more, not a lot, very few. But they're not using it, it's still not approved. But a lot of companies now do still use hair test. You see a lot of good hair, they use hair test on their own. And obviously they're not going to hire these drivers. But those positives from hair testing are not in the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. Can't be.
Okay, so only the urine test.
Yes.
So if we're looking, so if my audience is trying to figure out if that happened, there are certain companies that do hair testing.
Yeah, on their own.
You can go find it on Reddit. You can go find it on a couple other places. Who's doing hair testing? There's on Reddit. It's pretty interesting. You can go in there and find drivers saying, "Don't go to this company because they hair test. Go apply to the. If you're worried, go. They only do urine testing. So the drivers know who does hair and who does the urine test.
Do you ever see anything on Reddit about Whizinators?
Tell me what a Whizinator is.
Oh, I thought you'd know. I mean, it's...
I do. I want the audience to hear from you. It's awesome.
And we saw that with the state police. I mean, you can go just Google Whizinator, but it's a way where you can store urine in a false cavity that you wear with your pants and then use.
That's the way I used to bring alcohol into football games.
Yeah,
it's a great method. Yeah. So there's all kind of ways around it, but you can tell when a safe company is trying to operate safely and when a dangerous company doesn't care.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? And you just got to look for that. But let's talk about this. And I know we got to be in the second podcast, but this is always interesting to me. And I think I even told you the story. We had a driver that tested positive for cocaine after the crash. And when we asked him what happened, he said, "Well, I got that from some Advil at a truck stop." And then he took a break and he came back and he said, "I got to tell you the truth." I said, "Oh, good. What's the truth?" He says, "Well, I was at that truck stop and I bought the wrong urine." And I thought, well, what were you trying to cover up if you buy urine at a truck stop? But those things happen. But here's the thing that's interesting to me, and I think a lot of the audience knows this, but not everybody. There's only 5 drugs they're testing for. And one of those drugs they're testing for is Quaaludes, which I don't even think they have Quaaludes anymore.
Yeah, I mean, again, the federal regulations, they're looking at it right now. They're looking at marijuana, as a matter of fact. They keep that off is it going to be a schedule?
They do test for marijuana.
Absolutely. It's the number one positive right now.
But one of the things they don't test for, which is very common now with truck drivers, is not Valium, Xanax.
Yeah.
And Xanax, I think, right here in the state of Mississippi where we're filming this, is the 3rd leading cause of DWIs. Oh, that's not true. It went from alcohol, it used to be marijuana, now it's alcohol, Xanax number 2.
I believe it.
And so the drivers are taking Xanax, but the 5-panel test doesn't test for Xanax.
Nope. And they'll show you what the 5-panel test is. When you look at the driver qualification file, I see it. What they're doing.
I think they test for like PCP, angel dust, and things like that. I mean, but they're not using those drugs. They're using different drugs now, but they're not testing for them.
It's the opioids, the codeines, and the oxycontins and stuff like that.
And marijuana.
Yeah, marijuana.
Right, which is legal in half the states now.
So another thing I mentioned to you earlier about the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. In that clearinghouse today, and this is an approximate because I'm looking at maybe 3 weeks ago, the numbers, there are 180,000 drivers that have CDLs that are in that database, and they are prohibited from operating a commercial vehicle. Prohibited. They're not supposed to be out there. So the question, even when I was with the feds, I go, okay, where are these drivers today? Did they leave the industry? Did they get fired from their job and maybe started up their owner-operator company? Or did they go on to another company? I don't know where those drivers are. I would assume most of them are out of the industry. But later on in November of this year, those 180,000 drivers, even though they're not prohibited to, they can't operate now, but all state licensing agencies will be suspending, revoking, or disqualifying. I use this 3 words interchangeably because they are within different states. They will be suspended in the states. It'll be on their CDL that they are suspended.
We're here in Tennessee. we might have, if we get on the interstate right here, we might find somebody that's driving that is tested positive and has been disqualified to drive, but the state doesn't know it and they're out there operating legally.
Right.
Correct?
Absolutely. So here's a...
And those of us, if we can't find out.
So so I'm an everyday trooper out there. I'm not a truck inspector. I'm in New York pulling over your truck driver. Today, I won't know that he's prohibited because I'm only running his license check, not the federal database. Because I don't know about the database because I'm a regular trooper. Now, any police officer, anyone, will be able to just do a license and registration check or a license check, and they'll know that the driver is now suspended and the reason why.
In November.
Yeah.
Not now.
No.
But the people that do know right now is the trucking company that put them on the road.
Absolutely.
And so a trucking company, man, that to me
seems
seems like a massive loophole right there. A trucking company knows this person's prohibited from driving, but no one else knows, so they put them behind the wheel.
No, they'll know. I mean, again, you go back to your...
Well, I'm saying the trucking company will know, but anybody that pulls them over won't know.
Oh, right.
If he gets pulled over at
Correct.
a truck stop, they're not going to know.
There's some states now that got ahead of the game and do it. They did it on their own before the regulation kicked in. But there's a whole story about that, how it happened. And we thought when the regulation came out, the Drug and Alcohol database, we thought the states would automatically suspend those drivers. When we put them in prohibited, a lot of them says legal, they couldn't. They needed a specific regulation that says if a driver's prohibited, we will suspend them. So that's what it prolonged it. The rulemaking in the federal government is like 4 years.
So if our audience is in a situation like that where they're not sure, what would be the best way for them to find out if somebody was prohibited from driving, but no one else knows?
You got to get into the clearinghouse. I mean, they have to have access to that. It would be in that clearinghouse. Right now, there's 180,000. And again, we go back to the beginning where we said most of these truck drivers or trucking companies are safe. They do the right thing. It's those ones that consciously just break that law.
Well, I mean, the problem is, like we just talked about, the urine versus hair test. There's ways to run a safe company, and there's ways to run what I hear trucking companies tell me all the time. We pass the minimum safety standards.
Right.
Right. Well, you can pass minimum safety standards and still be unsafe, right? Or you can find ways to be safe if you wanted to be, or if you just wanted butts in the seats, you would pass the minimum safety standards, right?
Correct.
We hear that all the time. So, Jack, it's my appreciation since you've retired from all. Thank you for your service, by the way, for the state troopers and the federal motor carriers to make these truckers safer. But now you're a consultant.
I am.
And some of our audience might say, you know what, Jack sounds pretty smart on that podcast. I'd like to get in touch with him and see if he can help me. How would they reach out to you?
Well, my consulting business is CMV Safety Experts. And
Slow down, you remember, I'm paying attention to him. What is it?
CMV Safety Experts. And you mentioned I'm retired. I am, but I got into it. I had a bunch of attorneys call me up for free advice. And I started working with them, and then all of a sudden somebody called me up and goes, would you come to, work with me on a contractual basis or consulting basis? I said, yes. So it's interesting. I learned, and I want to help the attorneys that I'm working for. I want to help the motor carriers that I'm working for. But don't get me wrong, if there's a motor carrier that's dangerous and shouldn't be out there, I want to get that motor carrier off the road. So there's no reason for that motor carrier to be on there. So my phone number, I just go by phone number. Thought about getting a website, but I like what I'm doing. I like the pace what I'm doing. I told everybody that if you sign up with me, you got 110% of my time. And I am very thorough, committed, but I love what I'm doing. I love working with the attorneys. I love working with the motor carriers. And the easiest way is a phone call, 703-595-7336. Jack Van Steenburg, CMV Safety Consultants.
Fantastic. Thank you for your time, my friend.
You're welcome. It's an honor.
That's all for today's episode of Grow Fast, Grow Smart, the PI Playbook by Accelerator. Be sure to subscribe for more tips and tricks on growing your law firm the smart way.